You can share. Sorry, I made a mess.
I'd like to call to order the City of Las Vegas Historic Preservation Commission meeting for January the 25th, 2017. Please call the roll.
Chair Stoldahl.
Here.
Vice Chair Clady White is excused. Commissioner Hausch. Not here yet. Commissioner Clank.
Here.
Commissioner Bellis. Not here yet. Commissioner McMillan Arnold.
Present.
Commissioner Levine.
Here.
Commissioner Beck is excused. Commissioner Otchkins. Commissioner Surface. Commissioner Cosgrove is excused. Commissioner Mooney.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson.
Here.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Item number 2, announcement regarding compliance with the open meeting law. Have we posted these meetings?
Yes, we are. We did.
Item 3, public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, please come to the microphone and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. The public is also welcome to make any comments as each item is being heard by the board. Do we have any members of the public? Hearing and seeing none, let's move on to item number 4. For possible action to approve the final minutes by reference to the regular meeting of December 14, 2016. Did everybody receive a copy of those minutes? Move to approve.
Second.
Did you get a copy?
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion to approve. We have a second. No public comment. Go to comment from the commission. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Motion, those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with the chair voting in favor. Item number 5 is HBC 68532, discussion of possible action regarding the draft nomination report for the Reed Whipple building located at 821 Las Vegas Boulevard North. Courtney?
The HBC requested a re-evaluation of the eligibility of the Reed Whipple building to the National Register of Historic Places, and the resulting nomination report was completed by Northwind Resource Consulting and funded by the Commission. Staff is requesting review and comment, and we have Greta Rail here from Northwind Resource Consulting to provide a presentation. You may remember her from such reports as the Huntridge and Beverly Hills surveys.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Always nice to be back. Can everyone see that okay? Seems like there might be a glare on
A
it.
little bit of light on it.
Yeah, it won't bother me if it helps. Is that too dark for you guys? Light off? I got something for you.
Let the record show that the Commissioner Ballas is with us.
I also tend to be quiet, so if at any point you can't hear me, just raise your hand and I'll speak up. So, as Courtney said, my name is Greta Rail, and I'm an architectural historian and historical archaeologist with Northwind Resource Consulting, and we are based out of Phoenix. And we were asked to do a National Register nomination for the Reed Whipple building, which you are all quite familiar with. It sits on a 3.55 acre parcel fronting North Las Vegas Boulevard within the city. It's bounded by residential and commercial lots to the south, the Las Vegas branch of the Clark County Library to the north, Veterans Memorial Drive to the west, and as I said before, North Las Vegas Boulevard to the east. And it's one of 7 buildings located along the city's cultural corridor trail. So just a little bit about the early history of the building. The building was originally constructed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or the LDS Church, between 1961 and 1962 for use as a multi-purpose recreational facility for 2 stakes in the city. The building, which was then known as the Las Vegas Administration and Cultural Center, cost more than $450,000 to construct and included a multi-purpose room, kitchen, recreation hall, council room, and baptismal room, as well as an administrative wing with offices. The building sat on 10 acres of land that also included 3 lighted softball fields, 1 with cement bleachers, which you can see on the bottom right, and a small building containing a kitchen and meeting rooms that was used as a stake center and also prepared refreshments during softball games. And that building you can actually see behind the bleachers on the bottom right. The property's buildings were designed by David G. Clark and Nolan Montgomery of David G. Clark and Associates of Reseda, California. Prior to forming David G. Clark and Associates in 1961, the 2 men designed 11 ward buildings in California during the period between 1957 and 1961. The Las Vegas Administration and Cultural Center is arguably their most modern church design. The building was constructed under the watch of Lee Adams and Carl Erickson, who served as construction superintendents, and much of the labor was actually performed by LDS church members. Although the building was planned under the former, although planned by the former LDS church president Thomas G. Myers, much of the site development was actually completed under the presidency of Reed Whipple, who was also a prominent businessman and Las Vegas City Commissioner. This is kind of a messy slide, but this basically gives the history of the building after 1970, which was a pivotal year because in that year, the property was sold to the city of Las Vegas for $1 million. At that point, it was used as a municipal facility for the city until 1972, when a new building was constructed on 400 Stewart Avenue. After that date, it was utilized by various nonprofit organizations, including the Rainbow Company, the Las Vegas Shakespeare Company, and Las Vegas Orchestra as an art studio and community theater. In 1986, the northern 6.4 acres of the property were cleared for the construction of the Las Vegas branch of the Clark County Library System, which was completed in 1990. In 2001, the building was closed due to budget cuts, which brings us to our current day. Between 2012 and 2017, after numerous efforts to revitalize the building, the center was proposed for possible demolition to accommodate the city's light rail, which sparked a bit of controversy in the news, and you can see one of those headlines at the bottom right that actually appeared in the Las Vegas Weekly. And in 2016, the city issued a request for proposals seeking prospective owners or tenants for the property, which brings us to the current day. In September of 2016, myself and our company's historian, Helena Reuter, conducted a site visit for the property and did an extensive recordation of the architecture of the building. And all of you have been provided a copy of the National Register nomination, and I won't go through that in detail. There's pages upon pages of information that describe the architecture in detail. But what I did want to focus on were some of the character-defining features of the building that are still retained. You can see on the left an example of the decorative grillwork on the main elevation of the building, which is original to construction, still very much intact and looks much as it did when the building was constructed. You can also see the use of recessed concrete masonry units on the bottom right to create vertical bands or geometric patterns, which was a characteristic of modernist buildings and international style buildings, which is what this architectural style is. The international style also incorporated angles and played with geometry, and you can see that along the side of the building on the southern and northern facades, with the use of the flat-roofed extension, which creates covered walkways, and also cantilevered roofs, which you can see on the photograph on the left towards the right edge, which are the flat overhanging roofs, very rectangular in form. Those are on the wings of the building. And then also something that we thought was quite important was on the interior of the building, the large auditorium with the original stage and the open seating area is still retained. Of course, the building's undergone quite a few modifications and renovations as well, and these are just a couple of those. On the exterior of the building, there are murals that have been added. You can see that the murals are fairly cosmetic. The structural changes are not visible, but there are some slight alterations to the appearance of the building, and these are some of those alterations. The mural that you can see on the left is actually covering an original frieze. It's not clear if that frieze is actually retained beneath the plywood panels. I tried to get Courtney to go out with a crowbar in the middle of the night and pry it off, and she couldn't do it. But there is a rumor that those friezes are actually still there, preserved underneath the panels. But the mural that's there currently was actually done in the 1990s. You can also see that there's been an ADA accessible ramp that's been added to the left of the entryways. That happened in the 1990s, of course, to comply with the American with Disabilities Act. On the right-hand side, you can also see an example of a mural that's been painted. And that is a mural depicting Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, which was painted by UNLV students in 1992. Again, something that could easily be painted over. Perhaps the biggest exterior alteration is the removal of the small state center to the rear of the building. You can see in the aerial photograph to the left what the original configuration of the property looked like. The property continues to the north. The yellow box is just to highlight the buildings that are present. And you can actually see some of the softball diamond above it. But you can see that small T-shaped foundation to the back of the building, and that was the Stake Center, which you can see on the top right. Today, all that remains of that Stake Center is the foundation of the building. And it seems like that building, through aerial research, was removed in the early 2000s. So that building is no longer present. It was actually one of the earlier buildings on the property. The bleachers and the Stake Center were built in 1958 prior to the construction of the cultural center. Interior modifications to the property have been vast, and I just highlighted a couple. But there was a sound booth that was added opposite the stage. There's been a lot of wood frame partitioning done on the interior to create additional rooms, dressing rooms in the auditorium itself. You can see on the bottom the little box office that was created in the main lobby for tickets when it was used as a cultural center. And then perhaps the most pivotal loss, I think, to the building was the loss of the baptismal font, which was removed. It suffered a leak. It was actually underneath the stage that was sitting above it, and the building owners did not know that there was a leak, and by the time they caught it, it was too late. So a lot of the drywall had to be removed and repaired, and the font itself had to be removed. And of course, that was one of the original structures, and perhaps one of the only structures in the building that gave any indication of its function as having been a church property. So in order for the building to be looked at for listing in the National Register, because it was a religious property, religious properties are one of several properties considered by the National Register to not be eligible unless it meets certain standards. And they call these criterion considerations. And there are 7 of those criterion considerations, with the first, or criterion consideration A, having to do with religious properties. So in order for a religious property to be listed under criterion consideration A, it has to meet one of the 4 categories which you see on the screen, and the ones that are underlined in this case refer to the Reed Whipple building. So the resource was constructed by a religious institution. Of course, it was constructed by the LDS Church. And it was also owned by a religious institution of significance. And in order for a property to be eligible under criterion consideration A, the National Register Bulletin further states that a religious property may be eligible if it derives its primary significance from architectural or artistic distinction or historical importance. So that kind of narrowed the window that we had for determining if this building was in fact eligible for listing in the National Register. And it pretty much left us with a criterion C argument, which is architecture. And I will be honest in saying that this is probably one of the most complicated properties I have ever dealt with, and it wasn't a clear case. The historian and I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and even 3 days before we submitted the nomination, we're still questioning whether or not we had an eligible property. We went with our gut, and based on some correspondence that we had with the LDS Church Library, we felt that the building itself was actually a unique type of architecture, and as a unique type, that warranted its eligibility under criterion C. We did a lot of research on Mormon architecture of the day, and what we found was that it was extremely rare for these buildings to have been constructed during this time period without a chapel in place. There's quite a bit of history in the nomination about Mormon architecture and the development of Mormon architecture, but in this case, this is one of the few buildings that we've been able to find through research and correspondence with the church that actually functioned as a religious property but did not have a chapel for worship services, which led it to be kind of a unique building type for the church. We were able to pinpoint a couple of examples of similar buildings, and it seems like these buildings were all constructed during that 1950s to early 1960s window of time, prior to the church forming a building committee and developing standardized plans for architecture moving forward. So for our recommendation, we recommended eligible in the area of architecture under criterion C at the local level as a unique type of building constructed by the LDS Church for cultural and administrative uses. Integrity was another issue that we struggled with, in part due to the changes that have been made to the building's exterior, or interior. The exterior of the building is in very good shape. It clearly maintains its integrity of location, design, materials, workmanship, and feeling. Although association is no longer retained, as the building is not owned by the church any longer, and it's also not used by members of the church. And the setting had been slightly impacted by the removal of the softball fields and the stake center to the west. We considered those changes to be negligible, as the building is still located along a prominent thoroughfare, and the surrounding area has not changed a whole lot. We also felt that the historic function of the building is still reflected despite changes to the interior, largely because the auditorium area and the stage were still intact. And fortunately, a lot of the construction that's occurred on the interior of the building has been done fairly haphazardly, and I think it could be reversed if it ever became an issue. Clearly, the loss of the baptismal font was large, and we found ourselves going back and forth as to whether or not the integrity of the interior of the building outweighed the integrity of the exterior of the building. And in our opinion, we believe that it still retains sufficient integrity to be listed on the National Register. So, those are our recommendations. Again, please understand, it was a tough property. A very interesting building, and certainly a lot of fun for us to learn as much as we learned about Mormon architecture, which I hope you'll enjoy or have enjoyed reading in the nomination. And please, if you have any questions, I will do my absolute best to answer.
Question? I have a couple of the international style building. You've seen other buildings in Las Vegas. Are there other significant examples of that within the Las Vegas area that you're familiar with?
One of the things we looked at was, because, again, we had to go with criterion consideration A, its significance fell on the fact that it was a religious property. So any international style buildings in the city that are not church properties have no bearing on whether or not the building is significant. We did quite a bit of research into the church properties that still remain in Las Vegas, and there's some great international style war buildings that are still present. This building was unique in that it didn't have a steeple, which is something that I failed to mention. But a lot of those properties do have steeples. And they are ward houses, so they were designed with a different function in mind, and they had chapel services in them. So we felt, even though there were some great examples of this era of architecture that was done by the Mormon Church, the uniqueness of this property warranted its individual.
The steakhouse. I was going to say, the steakhouse that got torn down on 8th Street in Franklin was very much an international style that was very simplistic.
My question is that this was never really built to be a church.
No,
It was more built to be it appears to me, and I do remember the baseball field and the bleachers because I spent some time there, but that it was built to be like a community effort or a center for Mormon, for the Mormon church or whatever, but not a church.
That's correct.
I don't think it's actually ever built to be a church.
it was built for ward meetings, conferences, and recreational use. And it came at a time when the Mormon church population was expanding, and they were outgrowing their buildings at a fairly alarming rate. So this was kind of a building to take some of that heat off the chapel building.
The definition of a church largely has to do with the functions that go on within inside. That's what the architect of the steeple building. But there was a baptismal, which is clearly a church function, and a function that takes place within the church. Were there other religious elements that we were able to discover that fell within the Mormon basic?
The only other religious elements that the building had are the creases that may or may not exist under the mural.
That to me was the important part of preserving this outside of the building, to be sure that those freezers are still there.
Well, just a question two questions. One, the fact that it was a city hall doesn't play into the nomination at all.
Not under criterion consideration A.
There's no one, when you do, you have to pick one criteria, and you can't have the whole agenda to say, well, in addition to it, was also.
In this case, because of its function and because it was built as a religious property, typically religious properties are not eligible for listing in the National Register. I think because of bias. They don't want it to appear that there's a bias towards a particular religion. So if you have a religious property, you can just assume for the most part that it's not going to be recognized as an eligible building. It has to meet criterion consideration A. So because this building was constructed by the church, its significance is its relationship to the church. That was one thing we tried very hard. That was one of the areas we struggled with, was clearly the building, most of its history is not related to the church. It was only a church property for 8 years. It had 30 plus years as a municipal building, as a cultural center, as a center for people of the community to come together. But because it was constructed by the LDS Church, it had to meet that criterion consideration, which limited us to basing its significance on religion.
So is there a possibility for it to be eligible or to be made a historical, state historical, you think?
No,
But I'm asking.
Yes.
Is it a,
Yes.
is there a strong goal for it to be that way or?
It does meet criterion consideration A. We do believe that it is eligible for listing under criterion C for its architecture. And it retains the sufficient integrity to actually move forward with the listing if that's the direction that the state
When
wants to
these
go.
when somebody, a site is listed. Mr. Day, that's listed. Does the lot size go with that listing? In other words, start off with 10 acres, and now I think it's in the portion was moved over to build the library. So the remaining 3.55 acres, is that part of the nomination or just the part that the building is laid on?
The property, so it would be the entire 3.5.
Okay.
Yes, not the 10 acres.
Right. Other questions?
There's no restrictions of what the city can do with the rest of that acres, or what the parking lots could look like, or another building that could be a building adjacent to it, or anything like that. There's no restrictions with National Registry.
And in fact, even if it is listed, that they can tear it down at any point, the end result is it's just delisted.
More of an honor.
Yes.
So is this a real, I mean, is this likely to get questioned if we're, tiptoeing through the different criteria to get to this spot? Is this likely to get questioned when it gets to the National Park Service, or when it gets to SHPO, or can we pass it today and say, hey, yep, you agree?
It can always get questioned. And a lot of this is very subjective. I mean, it's a very subjective process, and it always is. It's not just this building. I would be very interested, honestly, to see what the keeper thought of the nomination, because we gave it our all. We tried as best as we could to make an argument for significance for this property, and I think we achieved it. But yes, they could very easily come back and say, well, we think because the interior has been renovated to the point that it has, that it doesn't retain sufficient integrity for listing. They could say that very easily. SHPO could say the same thing. I don't expect it happening with the SHPO. I would see that happening more at the keeper level.
I've never heard the word keep.
The keeper is the person that signs the nomination.
At the top of it, in DC.
Okay.
And in some
Is
cases.
that an official
Yes,
title?
yes.
The keeper of
The keeper of the National Register.
Really?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
and in some cases, they can come back and say, we think we have a better way for you to list this property, and here is the angle that you should take. And we've had success with nominations in the past, where we prepared a nomination for well, I'll just tell you, it was a house in Sun City in Arizona, and it was one of 3 houses that were left that were model homes when the Sun City neighborhood was developed. And we submitted it to the keeper based on SHPO recommendations, and the keeper came back and said, no, you can list this property like this, it's not gonna work, you should list it like this. And we changed our nomination, and it got listed. So they are very helpful in providing guidance as well.
SHPO, our state SHPO is pretty meticulous, and I'm trying to think of anything that from local, state, to the national, is take back to that.
There hasn't been that much spending. That has.
Well, there's quite a few that are
Not.
on. So usually if it gets past the state SHPO and gets their stamp, it's a pretty good chance it'll be approved.
Does it go straight from us to SHPO, or does it go to city council first, or how does what's the step by step?
Normally, if this commission recommends that we submit this nomination to the State Historic Preservation Office, it would be submitted to SHPO, and then they review it, and there may be some, back and forth with revisions or whatever, and then it goes to review by the Nevada State Museum Board, and if the museum board recommends that it moves forward, then it gets submitted to the National Register. Is that correct, Bob? Bob sits on that board as well. There is a form that needs to be signed by our highest our chief elected official, and then Chair Stovall before it gets submitted to SHPO.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
There might be a question as to if the mayor can sign on, if the signature is hers and hers alone, or if it is her signature as the mayor of the board. And so we just probably have to run through that exercise first, but there is a signature required from the mayor.
But before we get to that spot, any further questions about this nomination? Staff has indicated approval of the report, but more, I think, of a discussion, or are you in fact recommending approval?
Recommending approval of the report and then seeking direction.
I have one more question. We haven't heard anything more about the roadway other than everybody raising up of thing to not get the corner of the building torn off or have the roadway come right up to it if there was a lateral. Has there been any other discussion anywhere in the city or in the transportation department that anybody knows about? Bypassing it, or whatever. I mean, there was kind of a new plan was put out to bypass it, but does that move forward anywhere?
I don't believe so. I don't know, Robert, if you're aware, but since the last time a presentation was made to this commission, I don't believe there's been any additional work or thought put into that. So I don't know that there's really an update.
That said, let's assume that we pass it and it goes to the state and we go through that process and goes through and the keeper says done deal. That doesn't mean that something can't be changed at the site, correct? I was just on, it would just be on the historic register. It would be on the city side as well, the city's historic listing.
No, that's a whole other process.
This is not for the city's historic register, this is only for.
Which is a recognition and has no.
But if they did do any demolition, then they could get federal funds.
No, not necessarily. Where National Register designation has an impact is if there are federal funds used for widening Las Vegas Boulevard, say, that the federal highways would have to take into account its impact on historic properties. And so there would be a review as to whether or not the widening would impact the Reed Whipple. So it would be, it doesn't necessarily stop, a demolition of the property. It just gets taken into account.
Review and see the alternatives to that.
Right.
I move to approve the report.
That's it.
And we have a motion to approve the nomination. We have a second. Further discussion? Commission? General public? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with the chair voting in favor. Thank you very much. It's a great report with a lot of wonderful information about Mormon architecture and the history of the Mormon Church in the early days of Las Vegas. So, great job.
Thank you very much.
Record show. We now have really a quorum. We had one before. HPC 68538, discussion of possible action regarding participation by the Historic Preservation Commission.
You want direction
in future outreach efforts
Okay,
for
well, better.
implementation of the downtown master plan. Courtney?
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I apologize, but before we move on, are we done with that previous item? You've accepted the report,
It was fine.
and then that would be the end of it. Is that the intent of the commission?
Does it get filed to?
Well, this is,
Well, when you say when you accept the report, you're right, I assumed that the motion included sending it off for nomination.
I thought that was automatic.
I didn't hear that in the, that's what I want to make sure, I didn't hear that in the motion.
It was
Oh,
accept the
well,
report.
that was assumed.
No.
So we could certainly have a second motion.
I make a motion that we submit this to SHPO for national for approval.
Would that cover what you're?
Is that gonna cover what you want?
I think so. I think what we're seeking is direction to staff. What is the will of this commission? Is
Okay.
it sounds like it's for staff to follow the procedure.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Second her motion.
And I heard she seconded my motion that staff submits it to, is that what you need, that staff submits it to SHPO for approval?
Well, we go.
Give me the words, and if it sounds right, I'll say it.
The motion would be to approve
Yeah.
and forward, so. somebody could.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve and move forward
With the nomination.
with the nomination.
Okay, so.
Well, not, you
So
can wrap it up a
now,
little bit.
yeah, so now,
Now the attorney has to talk. Oh.
sorry, so you got now, so you have approved motion, right, to accept the report? So that's
done.
That's done, that's action taken, right? So if you want to have this if you want to have action, it's accept the report and do something else,
I wanna
then you have
amend-
to get rid of the
I
thing
want
that
to
you just
amend my
approved.
motion.
Okay, so what you do is you somebody on the approving side moves to reconsider the item, and then we start over.
Consider the item and accept the report and.
No, reconsider the item.
That's
Second,
one.
second,
Second.
action.
Public comment? Commission comment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the rescinding the previous motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We are now on.
New motion.
We are still on item HB 68532.
I'd like to make a motion that to accept the report and to move forward for consideration because of the national register.
Second. Well, what would you second? Yeah, the original motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully you enjoyed that glimpse into our world.
Appreciate it. The vote was unanimous with the chair voting in favor. So now we are on item 6, which is 68548. By the way, the previous one, I misspoke, the previous motion was for 68532. We're now on item number 6, which is 68538, discussion of possible action regarding participation of the Historic Preservation Commission in future outreach efforts for implementation of the downtown master plan.
The Historic Preservation Commission requested information regarding options for participating in the implementation of the Downtown Centennial Plan. We have with us today Long Range Manager Robert Summerfield to discuss some of those options with the Commission.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, for you, Robert Summerfield, Planning Section Manager for Long Range Planning and Office of Sustainability. Okay, so as requested, I'm going to just kind of go through what we're doing with the implementation phase of the Downtown Master Plan and talk about how this commission can interface with those implementation efforts. So as a part of the implementation phase, one of the first things that we are doing is we are working to bring a consultant on that's going to help us formulate new regulations for downtown. And so we will be doing stakeholder and outreach efforts as a part of that. That will involve some neighborhood meetings in the individual districts that we're working in. The first district that we anticipate working with will be the medical district, just because it's got the, right now, it has some of the furthest along plans, if you would, in terms of the activity because of medical school. Hopefully some of you saw the work that was done last night, the big town hall that they had on that. So we're going to be moving forward on that. So what we will be doing is we will make sure that Courtney, for your, I think you guys get a report on things that are coming up or articles on different historic notices, that kind of stuff. As a part of that, we will make sure that Courtney has kind of a calendar of when we're doing any of these outreach events or stakeholder gatherings, so that any members of the commission that want to participate in that will have that opportunity. Additionally, we do, at the request of the City Council, we do a quarterly update on the status of the implementation of the master plan. And so, again, we can include that in your information. If you would like, we can, have an item on your agenda where we can come back and talk about where we're at in the implementation. I think for this body, that may be there may be less of a need for a quarterly update, maybe more of a every 6 months, if that was something you guys were interested in, so we could update this commission on the status of what we're doing and how that impacts the historic preservation component of the plan. But that's where we're at in terms of implementing. We definitely want to make sure that this commission is involved to the extent that they are interested in being in those outreach efforts, and that we keep you abreast and apprised on what we're doing in the downtown area. Some of the other districts, though, that we will have some initial focus on will be the historic West Side districts and the Arts District. Those are the, beyond the medical district, those are the other two districts where we have a high emphasis and interest from the council in moving those, implementing the downtown master plan vision in those districts coming up. So that's what we're working on.
Maybe it's fine because there are, when we say the downtown area, is there geographic boundaries? And then you mentioned West Side and the Arts District, which is right at it downtown. Is there a map of the area when we say, you're not talking about all Las Vegas, you're talking about downtown?
Mr. Chairman, yes, so there is a defined boundary now that when I say downtown, I'm speaking to a defined boundary that we established and the City Council adopted as a part of the downtown master plan process. Within that downtown master plan boundary, there are 12 districts, and so those create sub-components of downtown, of which the Arts District is a sub-component of the overall downtown plan. The Medical District is a sub-component of the overall downtown plan. The Historic West Side is a little bit of an anomaly there in that it has its own plan for a larger geography, but we've also put a portion of it at the request of the Ward 5 councilperson and the work with that community. A portion of what is thought of as the larger Historic West Side is actually a part of the district in the downtown master plan. Generally speaking, if you want to talk about the boundaries, they now go up and include the cultural corridor up to Washington. So Washington on the north, Sahara on the south, Rancho on the west, and what would it be? Eastern 5 Points-ish. Down there, Bruce area on the east. And that's a general definition. I mean, there's some finagling in there, but that's generally the boundaries that we're talking about when we talk about downtown.
I think it would be helpful for this commission to be able to get a copy of that map and be able to, is there a timetable that each of the 12 districts will have a focus on that? You mentioned the medical district is the first one. And so it would be nice to get a map of that area so we can see and then some sort of if there is one, a chronology or a timeline of when each district is going to be the focus of discussion.
And Mr. Chairman, we will absolutely do that. While Robert's trying to pull up a map so you can look at it right away, absolutely we'll send you a copy of the map of each of the districts and a link to the plan and the timeline. As Robert said, we're focused right now in the medical district, the West Las Vegas area, or kind of the 100 plan area, and the 18B Arts District district. So the other, the goal is to have those wrapped up by roughly June. The remaining districts will begin working on as we have resources available, but over the course of the coming year, we hope to have all of them done. And this is a really, I think, a great, if to the extent that the commission wants to be engaged, this is where the rubber is hitting the road. The vision is laid out, and now comes putting the regulations that will help us achieve that vision. And the uses and all that kind of stuff. So any particular district being part of those stakeholder groups is, I think, going to be really important.
It came up, the medical district came up on Monday at the Centennial Commission, and there was a request for $30,000 to put up historical markers within the historic district. That was completely funded, but $10,000 was allocated to hire a historian come up with a list of 20 markers or?
If the scope changes, the amount of markers will change, but the original request was for 30.
For 30, to look at 30 markers, historic markers within that. So there's already an effort that is going to be made and funded by the Centennial Commission to look at what is historic within the medical district. So that's something sort of moving forward. So that should be part of, it's not just for the, put the markers on, it should give us some information on if there's some, you know, George Washington slept here, kind of not fiction. Maybe John C. Fremont. But the same thing could hold true with.
It's one of our alternate facts.
You got everybody started.
Which begs the question of how can we proactively be putting input in as opposed to, getting a report of what somebody else is doing and then having to react to it.
When is the first medical, well, I guess, okay, so the question is, we could very well, now that we know that the three, the priority, at least at this point, is the west side of the Arts District and the medical center. We will write it at our next meeting. We could have a subcommittee formed to look at and do research in each of those areas, so that we have some expertise in that area, and then appear at these meetings or submit that information to the. Who is it? Who is overseeing? Is it the council or is it the planning department? Who sits there and listens and writes the report?
Well, it's the planning department. Mr. Summerfield's the lead on the project, but we facilitate the stakeholder meetings and get their input. We'll have a consultant team that will help us actually draft the code provisions. And so, again, I think if Mr. Summerfield or through Courtney provides you the information on when the meetings are and that kind of thing, or the notes from them that we could report out at every commission meeting, our activity that's occurred. But in order to be proactive, it would be getting the list of when there's a meeting and having somebody attend, right?
Well, the first step would be is for us to get a sense of the geography, know when the next public meeting is going to be held to get input from that area, and appear. And the question then would be, are you representing? How do we represent the commission, or is it just the individual that appears before the committee? In other words, if you're on you become the leader of the Arts District historian, and you would appear before the group when they did the presentation. Would you be able to get up and say, here are the 12 historic structures there, and be careful?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Question. Don't they have someone that's doing that? Didn't you just say they're paying? Didn't somebody say they were paying a historian to look into the medical district?
Those are for
Is that
Margaret.
what I heard? What did I hear? Separate.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is a separate project that the Centennial Commission funded a study for, but that's for markers, for sidewalk markers that will go in the medical district area. Originally, it was being contemplated for just Charleston Boulevard, but I believe the direction at Monday's meeting was to look actually into the district and try to pull things. Courtney obviously was there.
Okay, so
Give
my
you more
question
detail
is,
on that one.
who gives them information? Let's just deal with one district at a time, because I'm 72 and my mind is slow, okay? So let's just say medical district. Who gives them the information in the medical district on the historical buildings, the historical events, or whatever that this commission would really be concerned with? Who gives them that information to say, well, why don't you take a second look at this before before you decide to knock this over or destroy it and build this brand new tall building or run a road through here, because this is a historical building. So I guess that's what I'm asking him. Am I asking you or am I asking you?
Maybe Robert?
Well, okay, through you, Mr. Chairman. So the process would be, if we have information readily available, we share that with the consultant that will help us with the regulations. Now, for the marker project, which is a separate project in the same area, so they're two parallel but separate projects, they would do just like any other historic survey. The consultant that's hired by the grant money that came from the Centennial Commission will go and they will do their research. They will, they'll go to the library, they'll check out old newspapers, they'll see what activities happened, they'll look at the history of the build, they'll look at those addresses. For what we're doing for our purposes, what we would be looking for from this board would be if there's any criteria as we're developing regulations that you would want to see propagated related to historic preservation in those regulations. What would that be? Not necessarily an inventory on historic building, more of are there elements of preservation reuse that, if for any reason we didn't already capture, because that is one of the things that particularly the consultant that we are looking at for these regulations, she looks at very closely, is opportunities for preservation and reuse. But if we miss something that you guys would like to see propagated in those regulations, then that's the advice that we would be looking for from
So
this
then this board would then put something to say that in the regulations that you would have to stop and take consideration to preserve maybe a building or bring that to the Historic Preservation Commission for review to see if that is really a historical building.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for in the regulation.
This is what I understand, and I guess you sort of answered, you did answer a question. There's already something in place within your process to deal with, to look at historic elements, or before we brought this up, what was this group doing as far as historic relevance in each of the areas? Was that part of the consideration?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So as a part of the visioning process, in all of those outreach efforts, we talked about including preservation and reuse and looking at the historic character, particularly in the Founders District. And one of the reasons it's called the Founders District is because we were looking towards some of the history in that area and the fact that that was an area where some of the older original settlement families had been located, and we wanted to celebrate that history. So but that was visioning. So we took that into consideration. The next stage is to create the regulations for what the future of development in those areas are. And so one of the missions that we will be giving that consultant as we're looking through that is we want to ensure that there are opportunities within those regulations to emphasize preservation and reuse, particularly reuse of any existing resources, so that we're cognizant of that as those regulations go forward. That wouldn't necessarily mean that every building has to, before a building would be demoed, that it wouldn't necessarily suggest that, but it would be that there would be encouragement. Maybe there's what we call progressive standards. So maybe if you reuse an existing building for a new purpose, you get a break on your parking requirement or something, instead of if you tear it all down and start from scratch. There could be some incentive type elements to the future regulations that help contribute to reuse, particularly if it has a historic significance. But
So
even
the
older buildings,
regulations,
period.
that's the next step. So is that what you would like to accomplish by June?
Well, yeah, so let me see if I can help here a little bit. So I think we're kind of mixing up two things. One is as something's happening, there's some sort of a development application or there's a project or something, yeah, then we go through the process that you're actually going to talk a little bit more on the next item. What we're talking about, when we talk about the regulations that go with the plan, we're talking about mostly the design elements for that district. The height of the buildings, the setbacks of the buildings, the architectural standards, that sort of stuff. There's also going to be some discussion on the uses, but Robert's right. That's where you would want to put something in there that gave more direction regarding preservation, conservation, that sort of stuff. And I don't know that you need to have somebody at the meeting officially representing the commission, but somebody who's there, because this is an iterative process. So something will be discussed. Let's say I just happened to pull up Fremont East real quick. Let's say we're discussing Fremont East. We'll have a stakeholder meeting. A member of the commission would be on that stakeholder group. The consultant would lead us through a process and say, here's what we're going to be doing. And then, we talk about certain things, get some feedback. People would go back, do more research, bring it back to the next meeting. So that person could be interacting, and at some point then the commission could have an official position on the kinds of things they'd like to see in the regulations for that district. So I think that can be relatively simple. I don't know that we have to big deal it. So for example, in the vision document for Fremont East, conserve existing neighborhoods in the vicinity and maintain their current characteristics, infill with low-rise homes and pocket parks. That's a pretty general statement. But when we start to get into more detail, that's where having that through that iterative process and the feedback and input from this commission, I think would be very helpful. And so I think we can accomplish that without imposing too much on anybody's time. But as I think where you're going is maybe split it up a little bit. When we get into those meetings with a particular district, somebody just attend the meetings and then start bringing that information back. And at some point, working with staff, we'll help craft whatever position you want, and then taking that back to the consultants and making sure we get all that right. Does that sound good?
Mr. Chairman, the next meeting, there is no next meeting scheduled at this point. We are in the process. We finally got a determination from purchasing. I can move forward with the requesting the consultant that I would like to bring on board for this project, who worked with us during the master planning vision process, so they have a lot of foundational information already. So at this point, we're in creating a contract and getting that out. So once we have that consultant on board, then I will have a schedule that I can share with you on specifically when we have the next meeting, when we're going to be convening those stakeholder groups and doing that level of outreach. Right now, we know it's between now and June. I don't have a calendar just yet.
Do you think would be not going to be the next 30 days? You're going to have it scheduled?
Through you, my director is pushing me to push purchasing to actually have the consultant on board within the next 30 days. Given the bureaucratic process that is government procurement, that's a very tight window for me to achieve. However,
No excuses, Mr. Summerfield.
So I'm hoping to actually get the consultant on board within the next 30 to 45 days max. And then we would actually, they have to hit the ground running. And one of the reasons why we're looking to the consultant that helped as a sub-consultant on the master plan is because they will be able to hit the ground running. And so that we can then get into that calendar of having those meetings start. But we're probably March at the first kind of stakeholder meeting that we'll have with the consultant on board.
So the first year is going to be the medical center, west side, and the arts district. And so maybe on our next agenda, we could discuss that when we get to item 11. We'll have this on our agenda to appoint the committee that would focus on each of those areas, rather than the entire group maybe going to a meeting that we would get volunteers. So, but when we get to item 11, we'll put that on the agenda and hopefully in the next 30 days, with the energy that I see at both ends of the table, we'll have the consultant hired. That's helpful. Thank you very much. Any further questions from the commission?
This is a point of order question. When you say through you, okay, nobody's ever used that term that I remember, and I don't know if that's used in other meetings, other places,
it is.
It does, or
Especially in legislature.
what does it actually mean? That you're
speaking through the chair. It's sort of a courtesy kind of a thing. It's an acknowledgement of.
You're showing respect. You're showing respect and kind of telling him he's boss. Even though we're talking to you, we're actually talking to him.
Okay.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
We're actually talking to him.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
And once again, I hope you enjoyed the journey into our world.
One other quick question. What is the status of the medical district plan thus far? Now, where are you at?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. To go back to that. So there's many things going on with the medical district plan. So we have the facilities master plan that the city adopted last year. And that was actually was done to help facilitate some preliminary work on getting funding for and support for locating the medical school within the medical district. Since that plan was adopted, the legislature did fund the medical school. The medical school, through the Board of Regents from UNLV, did decide and have cited and worked with Clark County to acquire the old health district site. That will be the location of the new medical school. As of last night, we had the town hall with the Clark County Medical Society, where there was actually quite a bit of information on how the medical school is evolving. That actual process is on a track I don't think anyone foresaw how fast that would be going. So they are actually demoing. If you were out there now, you can see that they've begun demo work on the old medical district building. There's some remediation stuff they're doing as they do that. So that's now done. That wasn't even supposed to start until the summer. So they're moving very quickly on that. Parallel to that, the university is working with their design team to actually put design work into place. Our Economic and Urban Development Department in our parking division is looking at locating parking facility within the medical district. The NDOT Project Neon is rapidly realigning the Martin Luther King Boulevard roadway, and they've taken out a lot of that housing already for the freeway, but now they're moving the roadway over. So we're going to see a brand new kind of frontage, if you would, for the medical district actually by this summer. The city is working to realign some of the roadways in there so we can create a new entryway. We're going to bring this consultant on board that will help us establish the new rules, because currently the medical district is a mix of rules from a special area plan, that old core medical district, and then has some regular zoning that isn't really conducive towards helping to achieve the medical district vision. So that's what the consultant is really going to help us do with that. So again, we're hoping to have those new regulations for development standards by the middle of this summer, by June. And then again, there's construction already occurring in some areas. There's an exclusive negotiating agreement with a company that's looking to do some complementary medical facilities in Symphony Park that will help complement the work that's happening in the core medical district. So quite a bit of energy and effort going on there.
Is the district, medical district, strictly on the north side of Charleston Medical, or is it still the south side?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I was able to bring up the map of the downtown planning area. The hatched is the current boundaries of the planning area. This cream color here that you see, that's what we call the area of influence. So acknowledging that the plan will cover specifically these areas within the hatching, but they are the development in those areas and the future of those areas influences the area outside of the hatching and is influenced by. So this plan kind of takes that into account. For the medical district, it's this light blue over here. So as you can see, we have taken the medical district in acknowledgement of the development south of Charleston. It's actually not necessarily the best planning practice to just draw boundaries on one side of the street, because that totally disregards the other side of the street. And really, from a planning perspective, we want that interaction of the built environment to the street and to the people. And so in this plan, we have actually included the parcel, essentially a parcel D on the south side of Charleston. Now, there are ongoing discussions about, do we continue, as we are doing the implementation phase, do we continue to include the Charleston corridor this far in the medical district? There's some in that community that aren't necessarily on board with the increased development along the corridor. And so we may actually retract this boundary to about here to where the Smiths and all those medical offices are, so it may be like right to here. But it does include essentially one level deep on property south of Charleston.
Is that Scott Katie?
The Scott's 80s would be, correct me, Courtney,
Yeah.
Scott's 80s and the
Yeah.
M1.
McNeil.
McNeil Estates, those are in this south area here.
So they're outside of this.
Those are outside of the district, yes, sir.
I have a question. You said the city was going to build a parking garage. Is that for the medical school or something else?
So through you, Mr. Chair. So the city is investigating the possible location of a parking garage in the district. It would support primarily the medical school, but not exclusively the medical school. So it would just be like the City Hall parking garage right across the street, built primarily to service City Hall, but is open to all. I mean, we have people who do monthly parking in the City Hall garage that work in the casinos. It services the courthouse, so it services a wider swath of users in the area, but built primarily for servicing this. So that parking garage that's being contemplated for the medical district will be, its principal user will probably be the medical school and the medical campus, because again, it's going to be more than just the medical school there. We already have nursing and dental, and the outlook is that those programs will be increased. So some of those allied sciences.
So like it would be adjacent to the medical school?
Correct, but it wouldn't be a part of the medical school property. But again, that's what's being contemplated. It's actually being looked at as a mixed-use facility, similar to what the City Hall garage is, with some office space that there's currently a credit union that's being displaced by some of the NDOT work. Maybe using them as a tenant. You know, all of that is in the conversation.
Why wouldn't the university build a parking garage?
Again, this is not a university-exclusive facility that's being contemplated. And again, it's being discussed. It's a part of that, what we're looking at to enhance the medical district overall, not just the medical district.
Further questions? A lot of good information, and as you look at that map, clearly there's a lot of, that's the beginning of Las Vegas. There's a lot of historic elements, and some are even still seeing it. Further questions? We'll have something on item 11. We'll talk about putting something on the agenda for next time to make sure that we're in the loop, and we'll send us a link to the map, so we'll just go on Google, but it'd be helpful.
Who's going to give us updates? Said updates how often?
Through you, Mr. Chair, those updates can be at the discretion of the commission. So if you would like them, again, I'm currently scheduled to give updates on a sort of quarterly basis to the city council. So if you guys would like those updates in proximity to that, you can schedule them that way. If you prefer something so it's not clogging your agenda, something more like every 6 months, I'm comfortable there. But staff is available to the commission as you would like.
Quarterly sounds good.
Well, we come up to item 11, we'll deal with that. So if you'd like to do quarterly, we'll talk about it. Further comments? Great, thank you very much. Really appreciate your help on guiding us through that process, some understanding of what we're all facing. Item 8 is a report by the Department of Planning regarding the administrative of
We're on 7.
HPC 68533, discussion for possible action regarding a request by the Historic Preservation Commission to the HPC Chair to appoint an ad hoc committee to research the powers of the Historic Preservation Commission related to the demolition of historic properties. And I think it's one of the, your thoughts. You spoke out.
You're asking me my thoughts?
Yes.
Should we appoint an ad hoc committee?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, we need to have some people doing it.
Was that, were you volunteering?
I could do that, but I would need some, I would, just to be honest about it, I would need some help and direction in that, yeah. But I don't have a problem putting forth my effort.
Well, we
to
talked
do
about,
that,
we
because
talked,
we do need to have some regulations.
well,
We need more power.
well, why don't we just go ahead and briefly talk about what we would like this committee to deliverable, and when we would like it to come back. The idea is that the buildings were torn down, old buildings were 50 years and older, are being torn down without the HPC having any knowledge of that. They're not on the register, they're not, Courtney at the last meeting provided a lot of detail about what other communities are doing. There's some guidelines in there. So what would we like this committee to do?
Well, I think we need to be able to have some kind of an input before the demolition permit gets issued. Okay, or be able to find out that there's a demolition permit been requested for that. Those don't happen instantaneously, do they? I mean, you know, come down, pay a demolition fee to demolish the building and get that permit and walk out with the permit, do you?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, well, how do you slow that down? I mean, do we even have time to know that something that we think would be relevant or important, you know, to deal with isn't gone before we even know about it, which is what just happened.
Right, which is what this committee would look at. I mean, that's currently, right now, you can walk in most of the time and get a demolition permit that day.
I didn't realize it was that fast. Okay.
But then also the issue is what would be, for example, the recommendation coming back from this committee? Is it 25-year-old buildings, 50-year-old buildings, 100-year-old buildings? Some sort of recommendation that this committee would come back with this group on what elements we would like to extend the commission's powers to. And then we would take those elements that the committee recommends, talk about them, and then formalize a resolution, and then it will go to the planning commission or to the council.
And of course, Mr. Chairman, that all depends, right? And I think that was the idea behind the subcommittee, because Courtney's report kind of laid it out all the way from do nothing to stop everything, right?
Right.
And in between there is probably where this commission wants to land, and depending on where that is, may or may not take a change to code. So those are the things that need to be explored. Maybe I can imagine coming back with a couple of options. Staff will be, attend all. Staff was going to support this effort. We're not just going to say, hey, go figure it out. And then maybe there'll be a couple options that'll come back. Hey, if we get this much, we'll at least get a glimpse as to what's going on, but we don't have to rewrite the code versus we really want to go this far, which means we have to take it to council and all this other stuff. So that's what I would envision coming out of this subcommittee is kind of getting the range that this commission would be comfortable with, accomplishing what it is that you want to do, and then making a recommendation or a directive and just staff direction accordingly.
I thought we discussed that our main concern, and I still agree with the subcommittee thing, but I'm saying, you talked about timeline, and I thought a concern were buildings 50 years and older. That we would really want notification on prior to you being able to walk in and tear that building down or something. But it was, I thought we had set a timeline of 50 years.
Well, I don't think we did, that wasn't on the agenda to determine. It was basically, we thought we needed to create a committee to really go over, I think all the answers are in the report that Courtney put out this last time. There are lots of answers. We just need to pick out of all the various options, what are the answers that we want to recommend? What are the solutions? So basically this committee would look at, I think, what Courtney provided last time. Go through and say, well, it worked in Phoenix, this may apply here, this was in Detroit, no, that doesn't. Or we want to have 100-year-old buildings. Just go through as a group and come back with now, again, if you meet as a group, you're going to have to go through the open meeting law.
The clerk's office recommends that if an ad hoc committee is established, that it meet right before the Historic Preservation Commission meeting, just to make things probably easier on everyone because this meeting is already on everyone's schedule. And it'd be easier to kind of get in with the, arrange with the clerk's office schedule.
So then I would recommend whoever's on the committee review what Courtney has written, bring to the meeting your thoughts, and then just narrow down to a report on a consensus that we like 50 years plus, et cetera. Again, a lot of the work was done by Courtney in pulling out. Does everybody have a copy of that?
Yeah.
If not, I think it's on the website that we could down on. So who would like to be on this committee? I think 3 or 4 people. One? Is that? Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Who else would like to be on this committee in addition to you? Okay, so there's 4 that would be on the committee. Again, we would you'd meet, how long do you think you'd need? An hour and a half before our next meeting?
Hour, yeah. At least an hour. I think at least an hour. Yeah.
Maybe you want to do meet 90 minutes before, so you can take a little bit of a break between the 2 meetings, or
That's fine.
Courtney?
Chair, if we could, who raised their hands? Okay.
All right, and so,
Will Courtney be in attendance? Someone from the city to say, no, we can't do that, or their computer systems will recognize this, they won't recognize that.
Yeah.
Somehow I don't think.
Chair, I will be in attendance.
want to get a motion to do that, to appoint the ad hoc committee?
Yeah, you've got it. Well, the way that we've set it up on the agenda was that we've got the whole group talking about whether or not it should be set up and directing you to do it under your powers. So if you want, if that's what you'd like to do, then that's what we do. If you'd prefer to just strike the item and then do it yourself, I suppose that's another option.
If I had a sword, but have one of these shows.
We just moved to create the ad hoc committee with the chairman authorized to appoint this.
Which I have just appointed. Right. So you're all appointed. I was, okay.
I'll second that.
All those in favor
So
say
what was
aye.
the motion
Aye.
exactly,
Those
Jim?
opposed?
What do we call that motion?
Chair voting in favor. You get who, get first and second.
That we need a
Motion.
meeting to determine when the meeting will be.
There was the motion to direct the chair to appoint.
Okay, so do they need another
Again,
motion?
I think all of us would take a look
He
at
has
the
the
one
power to do that on his own under the bylaws.
the four of you could sit
Makes a
and come
motion
back
to
with
direct chair
the
to
recommendation.
appoint.
On what day would that
Two.
be?
That would be the next, it's the next HPC meeting, March, or February 25th, I think?
90 minutes.
Was that the 25th?
I think it's the 25th. I'm sorry, I don't have a, oh wait, maybe I do.
February 25th?
Yeah.
And
February
excuse-
22nd.
February 22nd at,
We still need to confirm with the clerk's office.
okay.
And Chair, please
Yeah.
excuse me, but I want to make sure I understand the motion maker's scope. We talked about directing you to create an ad hoc committee. To do what? What did the motion maker?
Was to appoint the four people to the committee,
Okay.
and those four people are listed.
Okay, so, but it's.
The Transformation Commission powers relating to the demolition of historic buildings.
Let me see that agenda item.
Item 7.
Yeah.
Here it is. I just want to make sure we get it
Yeah.
right for the minute here. So we're going to.
Motion to direct chair to create an ad hoc committee.
Relating to the demolition of historic properties. And possible changes to city, Los Angeles Code, Chapter 19, and 115.
But tentatively,
Okay, and do we want to say who he appointed?
No, because that's his, he has the power to do it separate.
Write anything in pen.
And so,
I'll put a question.
I mean, in the minutes, obviously, you record what he's saying, but it's not part of it.
And who was our motion maker?
Yeah.
Jack.
Thank you.
Whatever the same room is, or the other meeting could be, who knows?
And then for the the sake of the minutes, who were the four that were appointed?
McMillan Arnold, Levine, Clink, Surface.
Very good, thank you.
Chair, will you be serving on
No.
this? Oh, no.
And Court.
Quite frankly, any commissioner that would like to sit in, could certainly sit in. Just let me know the board members of the board.
Action meetings, you can take separate action. Right, so it didn't need to be part of today's thing. We should have actually-
We're now on 8.
Basically, what I said when they made the motion was to get these people to agree. They didn't say
Well, they don't want it, the guy who made the motion said, you're gonna make the motion, just point it out, because they pursue it to, and I pursue it to the agenda item, and that's the agenda.
We okay? All right, let's go ahead and resume. We are on item 8, report by the Department of Planning regarding an administrative approval of an application to reconstruct the roof at 1101 South 6th Street in non-contributing resources in the John F. Martin neighborhood. Courtney?
Staff reviewed the request to reconstruct the roof and found it to be in kind and therefore compatible with the recognized distinctive character of the individual property and met the following John S. Park Neighborhood Historic District guidelines, which apply to both contributing and non-contributing properties. That all original architectural details must be maintained as originally constructed. Roof massing shall be maintained as originally constructed, and roof materials shall be maintained as originally constructed, or shall be replaced with a material compatible with the style of the house. And you did a pretty good job. So,
That was an information item, any questions? All right,
Do they tear it down and then we're told to put it back up? Or
originally, the contractor did not submit a permit request, and so the roof was removed.
Let's go to item 9, report by the Department of Planning regarding historic and archaeological resources in the local community. We have a full report with lots of stories. As much as we all highlight those stories, as we read, there's always something we miss. Further comments, thoughts, any questions about that? All right, let's go to item number 10, which is a report by the Department of Planning regarding a project update with Courtney.
The Berkeley Square Historic District banners and sign toppers. We have received some draft designs from Joe Watson, which, if you recall, Joe was the original artist that designed the banners that are at the Berkeley Square neighborhood now. And he's designing those sign toppers that the commission approved the funding for. They sit on top of the street signs, and they're about that wide, and they're flat. And they will have the original artwork that are on the banners now, and then also some permanent like metal or what they call the original or the final material, but it'll be a hard type of material that will last longer than the vinyl. So we've gotten the draft designs. We're going to forward those to Councilman Barlow's office for review. They should be on the February HBC agenda for your review. The Reed Whipple building, we heard the presentation today, and those are the only 2 items.
Questions? Hearing none. Move to item 11, which is discussion regarding future topics for agenda items by the commission. Comments made during this portion of the agenda by the members shall refer solely to proposals for future agenda items and any discussion shall be limited to whether or not such proposed items are within the purview of the commission and/or whether such proposed items shall be placed on future agenda. No discussion regarding the substance of any proposed topic shall occur, and no action shall be taken. What we would like to have on the agenda regarding the presentation for the medical district, or we want to have that as an annual review or quarterly review?
I think I mentioned before that I would like to see a quarterly review. So I like to make a more most. No, I'm just saying I would like to see a quarterly because you're in the topic, so I can't make a motion. Right.
What would be the item you
The item would be an update. What is the master plan or not a master?
Yeah, the Vision 2045 downtown master plan implementation. Just to make it easy for the third.
And then also we'll have a report, an item on the agenda by the ad hoc committee on item 7. Anything else we'd like to see on that agenda for February?
Yeah, that's fine.
Going once. Item 12, citizen participation. Public comments during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. No subject may be acted upon by the board unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. You would be heard, give your name for the record, the amount of discussion of any single subject, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed. It may be limited. Seeing none from the general public, any comments from the board? Other than thank you for Courtney. I hope everybody got their copy of the latest version. You sent that out? That we asked for. Of the bylaw and updated your manual. Right. Very good.
That's not going to be
I'd like to go back to item 11 on how to do that, but if you could put on the item 11 an update on where we stand with examination.
Oh, I can tell you that right now.
Okay.
We're just waiting to work with the neighborhood. I sent the draft to the neighborhood association, and he's reviewing it, the president, and then he's gonna get back to me on when they want to do a neighborhood meeting.
Yeah, didn't mean that at all. I meant read with.
Oh.
If we can just know if that's has gone
Yeah.
on. But thank you for that as well.
Okay.
Other comments? Thoughts? Issues?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't forget, coming up in December, my term of office will be up, so we can figure out who would like to follow.
Yeah.
I am on there.
Are you talking about chair or are you talking about serving on the commission?
One comes before the other. My service on the commission ends in
2042.
Great.
and then I think that, but anyway, December of this year. So time flies.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just had one comment as a citizen rather than a member of the commission. Just wanted to let everybody know Urban Land Institute and the Nevada Preservation Foundation and the Nevada Governor's Office of Energy, we've all kind of got together and we're going to do a historic preservation workshop February 9th from 8:30 to 3:30 over at the Historic West Side School. Everybody's more than welcome to join us. 8:30 to 3:30.
It's about economic benefits of preservation
Yes.
or something? Okay.
Yeah, yep, kind of what the development community can see some profitable moves by doing historic preservation. So you're all more than welcome to come, and it should be a fun group and a fun day.
Great, thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I should have done that before the meeting.